All right, class, let's get going on our last board for 18th century society. Our essential question: how did the 18th century society in Western Europe affect Eastern Europe? Now, the colonial Latin America, remember that empire had declined when Spain lost the war to England in 1558, their Spanish Armada. They began to decline with Philip II, but as gold and silver continued to pour back into Spain, it started to build back up. The Spanish Empire grew under Philip V's reign. Creoles were Spaniards born in Latin America. They rivaled Spanish authorities. Then you had the mestizos, who were children born in Latin America of Spanish father and Indian mothers. Amerindians made up about 70% of the population. So 70% of the population in the Latin American countries were Amerindians, but the aristocracy, or the Creoles, still held the power, and ultimately this would lead to things like the Mexican Revolution against this authority. Now, life in the 18th century. After 1750, marriage developed new patterns, growth of cottage industry, more money, thus economically people were better off. And this enabled people to marry for love, and when you say love, is love at that time, not economic or political purposes, more often than not. Many more births to single moms, so illegitimacy of babies grew during this time. Babies were often spaced apart 2 or 3 years due to nursing. The lower class people tended to nurse more. Upper class hired wet nurses and did not nurse. They thought of it as something that was negative. Infanticide was still rampant due to poverty, and there was still a tremendous amount of babies that died before they turned the age of 2. Now, child rearing or education during the 18th century, children were treated indifferently and often strict physical discipline. Enlightenment ideas emphasized better treatment of children, but that didn't always take place. Boys often began a craft as young as 6 or 7. Girls oftentimes worked in the domestic service. Now, education of children began to take place mostly in the Protestant countries or in Northern Europe. France, though, started Christian schools for elementary age students as early as 1680. So France, even though it was a Catholic country, they had some Christian schools that really started getting going with education of elementary age kids from the start. Enlightenment reinforced an education for everyone. Now, life expectancy, lifespans increased due to better diet and medical knowledge. Average age increased from 25 to 35 during the 1700s. The bubonic plague had disappeared. The conquest of smallpox in the 1700s by a Turkish woman helped curb the disease. So this Turkish lady started inoculating people, had a vaccine, and then it was Edward Jenner in 1778 creates a foundation to get rid of smallpox, mass produces the vaccine, and it helps a lot of people. Now, hospitals improve patient care, and they get cleaner. Not clean enough, but cleaner than what they were. Now, art during this time, the Rococo art, identified with King Louis XV. Many works focused on playful scenes of aristocracy and the bourgeoisie. Antoine Watteau, 1684 to 1721, paints Pilgrimage of Cyrthia. And then you had neoclassicism, late 1700s, early 1800s, sought the return to Roman Greek style, and you saw this with Jacques Louis David. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right. He paints the death of Socrates. So neoclassicism came back, right around the time of Napoleon, and you really see this, with a lot of paintings of Napoleon. He looks like an emperor. From the Roman times. Architecture becomes very popular of the neoclassicism and very popular in public buildings. Music at this time, you had Mozart and Beethoven. So you had a lot going on in the arts. Remember, history is no mystery. Take good notes.